Again, thank you very much for having me. I would tell a story today about what EUPC has been doing for the last years and how basically things are moving in certain directions regarding circularity of our industry. This slide, which I'm using since quite some years, indicates how important the plastics industry is in Europe in terms of number of small and medium-sized enterprises, in terms of employees, in terms of processed material. And that part, the processed material, 50 million tons of plastics converted every year, is no longer something being seen as so positive. We have failed as an industry to work harder and harder on circularity. And today there is no return. We have to develop circularity in our industry. So it's not only about putting all these materials and these products on the market. It's about really engaging with value chains and closed and controlled loops, to get access to the materials we put on the market and get them recycled. Over the years, EUPC is 30 years old since 2020. We've developed quite a lot of activities to work on this circularity. I remember in 1996, we started already to develop the European Plastics Recyclers Association, which basically started with 6 companies active in mechanical recycling. And we realized that mechanical recycling had some challenges. But if you look today, the volumes that are being processed mechanically through recycling operations in Europe, I think there's a long way that we have achieved something great for our industry that will continue to operate under the circularity aspects. We have developed platforms to defend specific materials which were under threat. Some of you have understood the stories on PVC, which was often being seen as the bad polymer, where alternatives were put on the market. We defend all plastics, all polymers. So we pushed the PVC industry to think more circular and achieve on a voluntary basis recycled volumes in a difficult market, because the building and construction market is a very difficult market to achieve circularity because these are long-term applications. But we succeeded. We succeeded in the year 2010 to achieve the goals, which was set to reach 200,000 tons of recycling, and we achieved them. 2020, we did not achieve our goal of 800,000 tons of recycled material, but that has different reasons. The COVID situation, also the issues of some legacy additives being used in PVC as a polymer, where regulators today are not entirely clear yet to pave the way to ensure that these legacy additives can be maintained in the polymer, or if we should go out of them and clearly have a purification of the plastics waste streams. So getting rid of all the bad additives, which are being classified under the new REACH regulation. And the story goes on. We developed Vinyl 2010 into Vinyl Plus for 2020. 2011, we've set up Waste Free Oceans, basically because we realized that the marine litter aspects were starting to have an extremely negative impact on our industry. Because it all starts with plastics packaging, single-use plastics items, which are being littered, but all of that reflects on the whole of the industry. OEMs are now looking all to their plastic footprint, are again looking into going from polymers maybe to other kind of materials, specific polymer selections. All of that is happening since a couple of years. EUPC continued to develop activities, so we supported the setting up of a PET value chain organization called PETCOR. We set up a monitoring digital platform to register the use of recycled material at converters level. I'll come back to that later on to explain you why we did this. A couple of years ago, we moved into developing an organization for chemical recycling next to mechanical recycling. And I strongly believe this is going to have a major impact on our industry, because without engaging the chemical industry in the circularity of polymers, we cannot proceed. We have to make sure that these developments take place, that technologies are being developed, are being used appropriately per polymer stream and even for mixed plastics fractions if possible. Going preferably from plastics back to plastics, if not possible, moving from plastics to chemicals or plastics to fuel. But also here, there's a big debate going on in how far these kind of definitions will apply in Europe in order to reach certain targets. We've developed also the polyolefin circular economy platform, which is a value chain collaboration platform at European level. And finally, we joined the Circular Plastics Alliance, which is the official collaboration, voluntary collaboration initiated by the European Commission together with the industry to achieve by the year 2025 a 10 million ton recycling target of used recycled materials by the plastics converters. So how do we do that? We have a structure which is, of course, an umbrella organization. So I can give you very well a helicopter overview about what's happening in all these fields. But we do have a structure. We still believe it's a lean structure. We have a General Assembly. Our members, our official voting members, are composed of about 50 organizations. Besides the 50 organizations, we have also direct company memberships, but these company memberships are there to support basically the projects that we initiate, not to have really the political voting power in the organization. That is left to organizations as such. So only organizations can officially apply to become a member, a voting member of EUPC. On the right side, you see the Senior Executives Forum, which is where all these companies, senior executives, are meeting. We have 2 meetings a year. It's more like an advising role to the board of EUPC, which is the steering committee composed of 13 elected members. And there's a budget committee, of course, controlling the finances. And then you see our matrix structure, how we are organized in order to ensure that we can allocate sufficient resources to all the markets and the issues that are affecting our industry. So below you see the different markets: packaging, building and construction, automotive and transport, and technical parts. This is where we organize the work related to these markets. And you have on the vertical side, you have the Health, Safety, Environment Committee, the raw materials, where, of course, supply issues are being discussed, Communications Committee, where we discuss the image of our industry and what we need to do about it, and becoming important also now trade, which has been, I would say, sleeping for a couple of years, but becoming a quite an important committee right now. And the Members Executives Forum is a platform twice a year where all the member organizations can meet. Here you have the, some of the membership, the companies that we are dealing with. I think some of you in the call today are members of some kind of organization linked to EUPC, or maybe even directly through a membership at the Senior Executives Forum. So also for EUPC and for the industry, another COVID-19 year. What did happen? Well, I think this did not improve in general, I would say, for our industry. A lot of focus has been on the single-use plastics bans, and I want to say this here because this has and will have continuous impact on the image of all the other products, and we have to be aware of this. So this is a game changer in the single-use plastics business segment, but it's also an eye opener, in my view, to all the other markets, knowing that circularity, recyclability, and real recycling is going to be key if we want to succeed in maintaining our markets and be in a profitable business. So these national single-use plastics bans have been started to be implemented. We're still trying to fight them, some of them legally, and they have been a dangerous alternatives placed on the markets. So this is also something that we try to explain to regulators, that the alternatives to plastics are sometimes even having a worse impact from an environment and even a health point of view. This European single-use plastics directive is being implemented right now, but it's creating really chaos in the European market. And that means what? It means that basically through a regulation which is prevailing the environment before the internal market, we are losing the internal market in Europe for these products. If you look at all the requirements being it on marking of the products, or anything related to one portion use of a single-use packaging. All these different interpretations at national level are basically fragmenting the European single market. And for small companies, this is extremely difficult because they are not able to adjust for every country they were in the past being able to sell. This is no longer going to be the case for the single-use plastics market. Plastic taxes and future of internal market. Well, plastic taxes, some of you may know, this has started also. There is another plastic tax, but a general levy of 800 euros per ton of non-recycled plastic packaging that EU countries have to pay to the budget of the European Union. Most of the countries will pay this from their own resources. They will not put a plastic tax on the products. However, certain countries have started to look into a national plastic tax in order to ensure that some revenues will be there to compensate on this additional fee. Italy and Spain in the European Union are the most advanced countries. We have worked very hard to try to block or postpone these proposals. They've gone through regulation and adoption in parliaments in Italy and in Spain. Now, the latest news is that they have been postponed for implementation until the 1st of January 2022. Also, that is creating a fragmentation in the internal market. On the Circular Plastics Alliance, lots of things are happening, but in an extremely slow process, an extremely bureaucratic process. What we managed to achieve is that we need to involve the SEN and SENELEC bodies into defining certain standards for recycling. So we've been calling all the national plastics associations to get their experts much more involved in SEN-SENELEC activities, because this is where the influence will come from. If we are looking into how to reach these 10 million tons of recycled polymers being used in products. Also, a new term which I got to know a couple of weeks ago is the weathering plastics. The weathering plastics with all the pellet losses and all the microplastics in the world. Scientists are now really being looking in this very deeply and scaring a lot of politicians, consumers about the impact this can have on human health. So where we used to have science speaking in favor of the industry, we do see now a tendency also where they are more likely to look for more studies to be performed and therefore using some emotional aspects in order to try to solve and look into what's going to happen in the future. I think the industry has to take this very seriously because this is not something that will go away. This is a global aspect. And some of you may know also that the United Nations is maybe looking into a kind of a global agreement on plastics. And this global agreement is not about developing the plastics industry. It's about reducing the consumption of plastics in the world and keeping it much better under control. The polymer supply shortage crisis for Europe, some of you are most likely have been affected by it. I'll come back to this. This has been a major issue for the last couple of months. Mandatory recycled content, also I'll come back to this one during this presentation. What if regulators are obliging all of us to put a minimum percentage of certain recycled material in certain applications? Which materials in which products? Regulators are doing this. It started with the Single-Use Plastics Directive and the PET bottle, and this tendency is just increasing to other applications. Some good news. I like quite a lot the Plastics Museum initiative in Spain. If you click on the link, you will see that this museum has been built completely out of plastics in the center of Madrid, totally recyclable. I'd like this museum also to go around Europe in all the capitals. I'd love to have it here in Brussels to show all the Eurocrats what plastics brings to society. because basically what people tend to forget is what plastics and polymers are bringing to our lives and our society. I think this is important that we keep reminding them about this. And finally, The Plastic Paradox is an extremely good book, which I really advise to widely distribute to any person that needs to engage in the future of our industry. And I'm talking here about civil servants working at national and European or international level, or even politicians, which should take the time to go to this book to understand really the truth about our industry. So this is the Plastics Paradox. I have ordered about 150 copies of that book. So send me an email. I'll be happy to send you a copy. This was the weathering plastics, the planetary boundary threat, which is there, and I think we need really as an industry to work seriously about this. Together with the value chain, EUPC has now set up the Operation Clean Sweep project, which we are getting also into the European Parliament in terms of setting up a kind of a monitoring or advisory committee in order to get some more control about these pellet losses in particular. If we are not as an industry going to ensure that every single plant manufacturing site keeps their pellet loss under control, if we're not going to do this and have a transparent way of communicating about it, regulators will impose it to us. Everything is ready. In 3 years from now, if we don't do it on a voluntary basis, you will not be able to operate a plant if you don't provide that information to the public bodies. And I think that's the risk that our industry has short term. Short term, I'm talking about 3 years. We have 3 years ahead of us to demonstrate a credible system of an audit and a certification scheme where each single plant can demonstrate that they are not losing any pellets anymore. I think this is quite impressive work we have ahead of us. And I'm always giving that message that every single company needs to understand it now and work towards the goals of zero pellet loss. Recycled content. We have tried since 3 years to avoid having mandatory recycled content in regulations. We failed for the PET industry, basically because the PET industry was under quite some pressure, and the brands, I'm talking about the Nestle's, the Coca-Colas, basically had a voluntary proposal to put 25% of recycled PET in their bottles. And by offering this to regulators, it was easily transformed into a regulatory mandatory requirement. And they made from 25, they made 30%. So here you see how politicians and regulators are basically using voluntary proposals by the industry and turn them into a regulatory requirement. So by 2025, no water bottle or soft drink bottle can be placed on the market if it doesn't contain a certain percentage of recycled PET. You see, of course, immediately the consequences on the prices of rPET on the market, where we used to be shipping PET waste outside of Europe. We are now importing even recycled PET into Europe because there's a lack of rPET in the European market. All of these developments will continue, not even remain in Europe. They will continue to move outside of Europe. So these mandatory recycled content aspects are quite important. So if we as an industry have to accept product-based mandatory recycled content, if it's unavoidable, we have 10 conditions that need to be taken into account. The first one is we want a European-wide harmonization through regulation to secure the single market. Because imagine if you have 27 different systems. We want to protect the single market. This is for us the most important one. The second one, we want a thorough assessment of the impacts of potentially alternative legal instrument to increase the uptake of recyclate. Where will the measurement point be of this recycled content? Will it be at the converter level? Will every converter, even sheet producers, have to demonstrate that he's using a certain percentage of recycled material? Or can we go to virgin polymer-based substitution quotas? What do I mean with this? I mean that the polymer producers are investing quite some money into chemical recycling infrastructures. The announcement that they made a couple of weeks ago indicate the seriousness, I think, of moving to so-called circular polymers. We could impose a certain percentage to that industry that they have to demonstrate that they have set up these infrastructures and they are selling basically a certain percentage of their virgin polymers as now circular polymer based. All of that could be checked through the mass balance approach, which still needs to be accepted by regulators. But there is an open discussion today on this. So on point 2, we are still in an open discussion with everybody to try to see what the best way is from a legal instrument point of view, how to impose these requirements. The third one is we want differentiations of quotas according to the segment they operate in. You know, you cannot compare a PET bottle with any kind of other product. So we need to look into this because everybody, from a political point of view, is putting all plastics in the same baskets, all markets in the same baskets, all percentages in the same baskets. And we have to work on this, going from the minimum potential to the maximum uptake of recycled material per sector, per product, or per application. The obligation to put it on the market should be at the filler and the distributor, not on the packaging manufacturer or the product manufacturer. That's what we believe in. We believe that it's not the converter, basically, who can be controlled to use it. We need to be a part of the value chain, the certification scheme, but we should not have the obligation to do it. It's basically the end consumer, the OEM, that has to take this. We need to work on standardization of these recyclate qualities and its availability. But the quality is extremely important because for many applications, the right quality is not there. We have it for certain polymers in limited ways, but we have to work on it. For packaging, we have to remove all the legal barriers for food contact before imposing any mandatory obligation. And there you see the differences between PET and the polyolefin segment, where PET, of course, is still years in advance of the other polyolefin industry when it comes to bottles because of their high recyclability rate. Food contact, where the EFSA approval systems for PET are done. But for polyolefins, they are waiting for the chemical recycling infrastructures in order to deal with this. So we need to make sure that everything is working in parallel. We need to ensure that there should be a suspension clause if the demand of recyclates exceeds the supply, because even if converters customers are asking for a minimum recycled content in certain products, we need to have the material availability. If the material is not there, look what happened. We didn't even have sufficient virgin material available a couple of weeks ago, and certain companies are still in that situation today. So we need to have the possibility to have a suspension clause in this. We also need to ensure that post-industrial recyclate is accepted and that it's not focused only on post-consumer. If that's going to be the case, then we should limit it certainly to certain applications and not go to a series of other applications. And we need to ensure legal enforcement by member state authorities and improve. Of course, we need to work together on supply and demand for qualitative recycled materials. As I said, the goal is there to achieve 10 million tons of recycled material. 10 million tons is a lot. It's a lot of recycled material in an industry which is under constant threat. Basically, we have to invest in using more recycled material, but we have also to start being more transparent in the use of recycled material. For decades, we were not going to be open and transparent about the use of recycled material, mainly because we believed it was cheaper to use recycled material, and customers may look at it from a different point of view. Creating this market of 10 million tons of recycled material hopefully will change this. But there are lots of markets where we still have to go. If you see on the on this right chart here, you see that the new markets where the quality recyclates will have to develop and the availability of these recyclates are in electronic, automotive, building construction, even up to consumer goods. Packaging is there to grow because it's short life application, so it will continuously grow. But all the other markets needs to grow as well. And I think this is quite important, specifically for even sheet producers, that they understand that the circularity aspects needs to be thought very, very carefully for the future. Now, linked to this CPA 10 million ton requirement, we made an agreement with the European Commission that through our organization, we would set up a platform to monitor what companies are doing in a very confidential way. It's a short survey. Companies can register and can register the volumes that they are using, the volumes of recycled material that they are using in their converting process in order to make finished products. We started this in 2018-19. We are operational now with this more tool in about 14 countries. The best country in class is France, where they achieved the first year 389,000 tons of recycled polymers. And all markets are represented here: packaging, construction, automotive, and consumer goods. So some of your products most likely are there. And we integrate also industrial waste, post-consumer waste. We make differences. And the latest European numbers is that we have reached our first million. And there's 9 others to go, and we don't have so much time. So it's a very ambitious tool, and I think we need to continue this. But if we've seen how digital aspects have impacted our business, I do believe that with this tool we can do great things, and we can be much more transparent in a neutral way towards the consumers, basically, also because they need to understand what is recycling. For many consumers, recycling was just putting some waste into a bin. No, there is so much more around recycling. Recycling for the industry starts when it basically reaches as a waste, it reaches a recycling plant. So the collection aspect was not that important because it's not under control of the industry. It's often under control of waste operators or municipalities. For us, it becomes important when you get control of the material and you then can make a regranulate, reprocessed material or flakes or whatever, in order to use it again into a sheet, a finished product, and register that. And that's the story that we have to tell. So through the More tool, you can also upload products, pictures of products that has been produced with certain recycled material in it. The 1 million ton in More is today composed of what you see here. So you see the PET industry taking the lead. But of course, if you make the sum of all the polyolefins, it's polyolefins being the biggest family. And this is reflecting, I would say, reality in terms of volumes available as well. We will communicate in the future also in which kind of applications this comes. Because as I said, this is becoming very important. Probably in the future, if whatever sheet you produce, architects may ask you to put a certain percentage of recycled material in a polycarbonate sheet, or just name it. These things are going to be there in the future. Of course, we cannot do this without audit and audit requirements and certification. And I know this sounds bureaucratic, but only through, I would say, recognized certification schemes, we will be able to change the mindset of politicians and consumers that we do have things under control as an industry. Neutral certification schemes are therefore important. So we try to coordinate everything under a new organization called Polycert Europe, which was basically established to facilitate verification and auditing of the volumes reported in the MOR tool. And there are at least 3, but I think there are more now, more schemes. There's also a scheme in Germany and I think in France very soon, which are national schemes, which we try to harmonize on a European level to make sure that every country is going to count and audit and certify the use of these recycled materials in the same way. And I think this is great work which is being done right now there. Some words on the Single-Use Plastics Directive. Well, again, it created total chaos in the single market. The guidelines have been delayed and delayed. Was published only 2 weeks ago, which doesn't give much time to member states to implement the guidelines. There will be a press release coming out, I think, this week from EUPC, which is highlighting this concern. A concern, of course, also mainly related to the fragmentation of the internal market. But as I said, we have lost that fight already 3 years ago with the adoption of the Single-Use Plastic Directive, where basically it was agreed between member states that protection of the environment should prevail over the internal market aspects. We just feel now and see and start to realize the implications this is going to have. There are still some documents and implementation acts to be prepared. So industry is working very hard on all of them. But you see that measuring of consumption reductions, we are talking about less plastics on the markets. I come back to what I said earlier. Every year we put 50 million tons of materials and products on the markets. Today, regulators are looking to reduce that. So we are reversing the situation. We have come in a completely different world and mindset. And circularity is a must if we want to keep our products, our services, and our activities. So as a conclusion, I've got 3 key messages. On the supply, supply is a major issue for plastics converters and probably will remain a major issue because of the circularity needs. So my advice is really to secure and lock your virgin polymer and circular polymer use for the future. I think this is extremely important to build long-term agreements and partnerships. Assess your supplies in difficult times and prepare the futures. And if there is a frustration, use the Polymers for Europe Alliance to highlight these frustrations, because there is something coming out of this work. There is from the alliance coming something out which you could use also in your own negotiations with polymer suppliers. On regulations are changing markets. Adapting to markets and essential goods are opportunities. So it's not all about negativity. It's about adapting our industry. Essential goods are again opportunities. What is essential today? There's a lot of discussion around these words. Essential goods are opportunities. Single-use plastics implementation has created chaos, and that will continue for a while. It will keep a lot of lawyers very active and very busy. But circularity is there and will remain there for all markets. That is a message I want to bring over. And finally, certification. Certification, you can't afford anymore to be in plastics without proper certification. So this was my...
I have a question, Alexandre. Can you hear me? This is Markus Wegener from MCAN.
Yes, Markus, I can hear you.
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned that there are legal barriers for certain applications like foot contact. How do you see the next steps there? How do you see the progress that's on the legislation side for post-industrial waste? How will this develop? Do you have an idea on that?
I think the timeline is that there won't be any decision taken by the authorities before 2022 on this. They will most likely accept that the EFSA approval will be applied for PET recycling for food contact, and find a timeline to accept also for polyolefins if chemical recycling can be demonstrated properly. So there's going to be a little delay in having everybody on board in the same time. But chemical recycling for polyolefins will be the only solution. There are openings, of course, in the current situation where you can have, even for HDPE milk bottles in the UK, there is an approval system if you can demonstrate that you have a totally closed loop system without the possibility of impurities. So that is possible. But it really depends on the application. But if you can demonstrate a totally closed loop system, then you can apply an EFSA dossier and get the approval for food contact. But I would, for mechanical recycling, to be honest, I would not do this. I would wait until chemical recycling is there.
Okay, thank you.